Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bionexus Health podcast series, Autism Uprooted. Today we will be traveling to Florida and speaking with Elizabeth. Elizabeth brought her son Samuel to me about a year ago when Sam was 11. He is 12 now. And, oftentimes moms of special needs kids are worried if an older child will make gains, will they see improvements? And Elizabeth, I must say, has reported remarkable improvements with Sam. And I am very grateful that she's here today with us to speak about her experiences, with the Bionexus protocol and why she chose to go with a natural herbal medicine protocol. Let's find out from Elizabeth herself, shall we?
Welcome to the Bionexus Health podcast with Dr. Jodie A. Darshaw, who holds a PhD in integrative medicine, is board certified in integrative pediatrics, an internationally recognized pioneering clinician, and author. And now here's your host of Bionexus Health podcast, Dr. Jodie A. Darshaw.
Welcome to today's podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And yes, if you could, how did you find me, and what made you decide to go all natural, and what were Sam's beginning symptoms?
His symptoms started very, very early, and it could have just been since birth.
Okay.
It feels like it was lifelong, but it did get more intense after he was a toddler. And when he was around 3.5, I felt like, I think he's got PANDAS and Lyme.
Mm-hmm.
I just had this feeling like it is so intense. I have never met anyone else whose child is having such severe mood swings. It was beyond tantrums, and just more violent and longer lasting and daily. And it just felt like almost we were living in a nightmare, but it was never, ever going to get better. So a lot of the symptoms were, well, we had lots of sensory symptoms, all sensory symptoms. We couldn't do any loud sounds, or he would, scream at us, like the blender or a vacuum or something. So I would say, I'm about to turn the blender on, because we sort of had to modify our life so that he would be okay. So it felt almost like we're walking on eggshells for everything we do. And if we do something wrong, we are going to be sort of like, he's going to be upset with us. And my husband and I don't yell, and we don't use, harsh, any harsh things like that. So we were just sort of confused, like, how is this happening? Like, what did we do? I know mothers always think, like, what did I do? But I really thought, what did I do? Because the symptoms were so severe. It was like constant irritability, just almost like chronic, like it never stopped, almost like he didn't ever have an opportunity to be a happy child.
Oh, right. I see. What about sleep and gut issues and, other than the mood swings?
The sleep was, he did not ever sleep through the night as a baby, and then into toddlerhood, he had a swallowing disorder. So then it was like I was waking in the night to feed him. And he would wake up very early every morning, probably for his whole life, like 5:30, 6. So sleep was pretty rough. Gut issues, it didn't seem like he had gut issues, but he had, when we did have a scope procedure done, he had gastritis, and the kitty wants to make sure we know that it was tough too.
Oh.
So he did have, the lining of his gut was irritated, so we could see that was happening. And I mean, there's so many symptoms. I guess I could go on and on for kind of a long time about it, because it felt like, and people were saying, well, it's not autism. He can make eye contact. He was very verbal. And and he could tell me exactly, every single thing he was upset about. And so it was confusing because it's like, well, what is this? And so and then when we went to get blood labs drawn, he pulled the needle out and we got kicked out of the office.
He pulls the needle out. Elizabeth, I just, what you mentioned, that people said he doesn't have autism, eye contact. Many times it is either overdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, right? Because, misdiagnosed when it's not realized that there is a spectrum, right? So, having sensory issues, having behavioral issues, with underlying PANDAS, Lyme disease, mold exposure, etc. But it can come across as being on the spectrum. Overall result is being on the spectrum. And, sometimes that helps to understand what is going on with the child. And then on the other hand, sometimes it is misdiagnosed or overly diagnosed. So I think you and Sam might have just fallen through the cracks a little bit. But sorry, go on.
That's what it felt like. It felt like we're living with a child who has autism, but we can't actually get the support we need.
Right.
And then my husband and I were so burned out that we sort of just stopped trying to pursue a diagnosis. We just accepted this is our life and we have to live with this because this is just how it is. So let's try to make our life, as comfortable as we can for everybody. So we don't travel. We didn't travel. We stopped attempting to travel because if we did, it turned into a very difficult time. So he had refused to leave the house for several years. When I found you. So we didn't go anywhere. And we had to homeschool because he would say things that were so severe that if you say that at school,
right,
you could, get all sorts of issues. And since I am a former teacher, I've seen those things firsthand, where a child could be Baker acted or because they said something about death or kill or something like that. And he would say those things, when he was having a hard time. And so we had to homeschool, and I'm glad that we did, but it was definitely a lot of pressure just to constantly be around someone who was always irritable. So it felt like I have to accept this and I want to model the best possible life I can for him. But this is really hard.
I can't even imagine. I mean, kids with PANS and PANDAS, they do have experienced morbid thoughts. I remember my son just, obsessing about the cemetery that we passed on the way to school. And, he would talk about bodies rotting, and it was just extremely inappropriate for a school setting. And so I can understand, but it's, it's one of the symptoms that PANDAS kids experience, intrusive thoughts.
And then it felt like when he did say the things, it was almost like he would just say lots and lots of terrible things, more so than anybody I've ever heard of. So it was like, we don't say those things. So I'm like, he's not getting them from school because he doesn't go to school. It's almost just like there was something in his body that was like causing him to have these episodes. And it felt like a mental health crisis every day, though, because it would be like an hour and a half, once or twice a day
of ranting.
And it could be triggered by like low blood sugar. So then I tried to make sure to feed him every 2 hours. And then I got really worried, like if somebody didn't feed him, then we couldn't kind of regain his, kind of get back to okay for a while. So, but then it wasn't always triggered by low blood sugar. Sometimes it could be something happened where he was upset about something, but it was almost like he couldn't move past the upset.
Okay.
So it felt like severe, and just like it wouldn't almost like we had this grip holding on to him that wouldn't let go. And I think the only way I could describe it is just he lost his childhood. He didn't get to be a part of things, because if you do that at an activity, nobody wants to be around you. So I didn't want to put him in stuff where people will shame him and tell him how bad he is, because I want him to have a good self-esteem. So, but we do have a friend or two come over. He can play with a friend, but just not groups, because it's just way too overstimulating. And then I found you because last year in August, we visited my mom, and several things happened while we were there. And he started having sort of like going into having a mental health episode again. And, he told me he wanted to jump out the window and, run away. He wanted to run away. And I know strep does create those runaway feelings. I have heard of other people whose kids say that. And so I called my friend whose son had PANS, and I just begged her. I said, I need help. I'm begging you, please. And I told her what happened, and then she gave me 4 links. And then I contacted everybody, because I was like, well, whoever could take me first. And they were all, doctors specializing in like, how to treat kids with PANS and Lyme and mold. And so your office, I called, and actually I wasn't able to get an appointment till November, and it was August. And then just before I got off the phone, I said, if you happen to have a cancellation, I would love to be fit in. We're sort of desperate right now. And the woman who I spoke to said, actually, we have something in 9 days. And it's like, that was the best, because we were really suffering. And after that is when everything changed.
So it was meant to be, right, Liz? I mean, I usually have a 4-month minimum waiting list, if not longer. And you heard that.
Yeah.
You called in August, November, and then you got it in 9 days. That's it. So it was meant for us to meet. We were, meant to work together to help Sam. So we did the labs. We saw. I'm sure you remember everything we saw in the labs, and the amount of infections and toxins and all of the triggers for PANDAS, biotoxin illness we identified. So can you talk about what you remember about Sam's labs?
Well, first of all, just to even get him to give a urine sample, we had to kind of like mention it for 3 weeks to him, because one of his symptoms was oppositional and defiant, and he would say no to everything, no matter what it was, no matter if it was brush your teeth or can you brush your teeth, or we're going to brush our teeth. So how can I get a child who tells me no 1 million times to agree to exercise for 30 minutes, heavy exercise, and then pee in something and then rest and then pee again? Like, it was like, how are we going to get this done? And that was in itself amazing. We finally, convinced him to use the virtual reality headset, and he did a I think it was a boxing game, and then he did the urine sample. And how do I get him to he was 11. How do I get him to go to the bathroom and me collect it? So that was, I actually cellophaned the toilet and put a plate on the toilet, and I put a sign up in the bathroom. And I put a cuss word on the plate. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I put happy shit on a plate day. And because I figured if I joke about it, he will maybe be more willing to do it. Right. And I just said, please go on the plate and don't touch it or anything. Just leave it alone. And so then I could do it. And it was like a miracle that I could even get the GI like sample. But just knowing how severe his behavior was, and then you telling me he has low white blood cell count. He can't even fight this. And he had five types of Lyme disease. And knowing how hard, we had kind of lived, like no day was normal. And I dreamed to just be able to have like kind of a peaceful life and and it was like, is this ever going to happen? So after those labs, he had so many things. And then you said, no wonder his nervous system is just out of control because his body is screaming. He had vocal tics on and off since probably he was 3 or 4 for sure. And they would change and they would go away. And a new one would come back. So no wonder he was, it was like his body was just having several battles inside of it. And he's just living in this body, trying to live and, not being able to really have any quality of life. So yeah, he had the 5 types of Lyme. He had E. coli, he had fecal strep, which was very helpful to know because strep in the body is going to attack the brain no matter where it is, if it's strep throat or if it's, hiding in the GI tract. So that was huge to find it out because it was like so reassuring to know that this whole time I thought this was what it was. And it was that. Yes. It's like, I'm not making it up. I'm not imagining it.
Yes.
He really has all these things that I felt like he had, but we just couldn't prove it because when we went to get the lab when he was 4, he pulled out the needle and we couldn't get any labs and we sort of got kicked out, because it was definitely a danger for him to pull out the needle. He could have,
yes.
And then after that, we just couldn't collect anything. So it was amazing that we could even get a urine and stool. And I'm so grateful. Every day now is different. You gave us a protocol after that. And it felt a little overwhelming at first because I just didn't understand how to get into a routine with it because it was already difficult to get him to say yes, really, to anything.
Exactly. No, I hear you, Elizabeth, because we had looked at 3 different species of Lyme, Babesia, Ehrlichia, mold exposure, and you mentioned, several gut infections, immune compromised, as well as leaky gut. All of these we found in whatever testing we were able to get done. I'm sure we'll be able to get additional testing done to look at brain inflammation, brain autoimmunity, neurotransmitters, so we can further customize the protocol. But for now, after you started the protocol, first of all, how did you, manage to convince him? How did that work? And what improvements have you seen since?
Okay, well, and we also did the mold swab test of the dust of our house.
Correct.
As well. And our rental house had mold.
Yes.
So all of it was contributing to his health condition that was severe. So we had several different bottles of drops. And so I needed to put 1 drop of each into a little bit of something for him to drink. But he will tell me immediately if he doesn't like it, so he'll say, get out of here, no, get out, just immediately, like I got feedback. So I was trying to figure out which juice I could put it in so that he would take it. So we tried several different things. We tried the pomegranate, we tried a little bit of orange juice. I think we finally fell on Gatorade, which I didn't want to use, but that was the thing he would agree to take. And And then if it was yellow, then, and I didn't even want to give him the dye because I don't even give him any food dye, but that was the only way he would agree to take it. And then he was like, oh, I don't like orange anymore. So then I would have to change to yellow. And then he said, oh no, you can't use red. That's already my favorite one. And so it was like, so finally we would like land on one, and then I needed him to take a few of the supplements. But if he didn't want to take those, or he'd say, oh, that's too many, that's no, I'm not doing 3. So it was definitely like, I also have to not be, my parenting style has also changed, and I've learned a lot in this, but we've gotten now into a routine where he knows he has Lyme disease. He knows, I showed him the tests. I said, this is very serious. This is no wonder this is happening. It's not your fault. Him knowing that he has 17 infections. And now he knows that it's a vocal tic. Like, we didn't ever say that, like, you have vocal tics. It's not on purpose. You're not doing this on purpose to make these noises. I think now he understands that he has an illness in his body. And now he says, I don't want this. I don't want to have Lyme disease. I don't want to have this. And so he's willing to take the protocol now, but he'll still tell me off, which I don't take it personally now. As a new mother, I did, because I thought, oh, what did I do? I failed. But I haven't failed. I just didn't understand that he had serious, infections. And it was affecting his brain, and his brain and his body were basically on fire, and his behavior was a reflection of his brain. And so it's nothing that we did, even though it feels like it is something that we did. So I think that's I think I answered that. But the progress that we've seen.
The what? Sorry?
The progress that we've seen now.
I was just going to say that. So things have changed.
Yes.
You've seen a progress. You've been able to move. He's out of the house, and he's able to go out now. So yes, if you could please tell us what improvements you've seen.
Sure. Well, since our rental house had mold, we decided to buy a house. So we built a house, and now we have our own home without mold. We got the air filters, so we have purifiers in the house, and we have water treatment so that he's not showering and bathing in chlorine and all of that. So the first thing is that he is not so irritable. The irritability has really come down tremendously, where most of his day he is in a pretty good mood, which is like the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I didn't know that it was possible for him to be in a good mood, because it just felt like, well, maybe he's just not a happy kid. Like, maybe I just need to say, like, stop trying to get him to be happy. This is just who he is. But it was all those infections. So he's usually in mostly a good mood. And if he does have something that's upsetting him, it's not like as long. So that's one really awesome part. So like, he'll be at his computer and I'll overhear him singing or laughing really hard. And it's amazing. It's like the best thing I've ever heard is to hear him laugh. Like, and sometimes I'll hear my husband and my son laughing at the top of their lungs. And it's like, it's just like, it's hard, because it's like, I'm now enjoying being a parent, and I didn't get to enjoy it. So, and I'm getting to see him get to have happiness in his childhood, and get to just sort of like, he goes between all the things he likes during the day, and he gets to actually enjoy himself and not just constantly be having these little explosions and then obsessing about whatever that was, and then not being able to drop it for several hours. So before, he wouldn't leave the house at all, and I had just sort of accepted that I need to go by myself after, my husband gets home from work, and I work from home. So I sort of felt trapped before. So now he'll say, oh, can I go with you? Like if I'm going to go shopping, he'll say, oh, I'm going to go with you. And sometimes I don't want him to go with me because I want to be by
I love
myself.
that. So,
But I'm so happy that he wants to go with me that like
yes.
I'm like, okay, I'm putting on my shoes as fast as I can so that he'll go with me. And then I don't even get myself ready because I don't care what I look like. I just want him to be able to be happy to get in the car.
Yes.
So that's fun. And there's so many improvements. It's hard to like even remember them all right this minute, but I write them down every day in my journal or in my gratitude list. Like I want to remember, every single good thing that's happened because we have sort of lived for so long without very much hope that he would be better. That now almost every little, glimpse I get is like a longer glimpse. And he's coming out of his room more. He wants to be with us. He wants to sit with us. He wants to talk with us and chat. And like we went to a buffet the other day. And, for the first time ever. And before we went in, like I didn't want him to do anything just because I know, what's possible. I didn't want him to do anything to the food. I didn't want him to touch it and put it back or sniff it. Or I was worrying because I'm like, this could go really badly. And I said, please use the tongs. And he was so good at it. He just put his food he was so happy with the variety, and he just put his food
awesome. Awesome. I love hearing that. Oh my gosh. I remember you mentioned that, he's been hanging out with his dad. He's been asking for money for chores. He's doing chores. He had fun on Halloween, right?
Yeah, he wants to do chores now. I can't, like, it's still shocking to say that out loud. So he'll want to earn money to buy something in his game. So he'll say, oh, I want, can you come up with chores? So then I come up with a little checklist. But then we can do the chore together, and it's not like he's fighting with me. It's like he wants to do the chore, and then we sort of do it really peacefully. I'm like, okay, then you do this, and then you do this part. And he's just able to do the chore. He was like running to get the basket of laundry to put the dirty clothes in. So it's just like he planted an avocado tree. He dug the hole. He needs heavy work. He wanted to dig the hole.
He dug the hole for the tree. That's fantastic. Oh my goodness.
And he's kind of a big boy because, his appetite has been really, really big for several years since, now we've realized it was all of these infections driving this huge appetite. So it worked for him to use the shovel and stand on the shovel. And but yeah, we've planted now 3 trees in the yard together. So there's so many things now that go right that if I blink, I'll miss them. And so that's why I have to write them down, because I never want to forget how it feels to be so excited, to get to, like, I never want to take it for granted, like how, how far we've come and how far he's come. And he likes to keep his stuff organized. If he has a collection of something, we keep it, like, it's really fun. It's fun sort of like holding on to these last few years of him being able to be a little boy before he's a teenager. So I'm so thankful. I mean, I could go on and on for kind of a long time about all the progress we've seen. So sometimes we'll record, because I do social media for my job. I gave him a microphone the other day to do a voiceover, and he's developing a sense of humor, and he whispered on the microphone, and he went, tomato. Tomato. And he's like zeroing in on my tomato plant. And then I mean, we might have laughed at the top of our lungs for like 10 minutes.
Oh, very cool. Well, Elizabeth, it is, I remember when I first met you, I think we were both in tears when I heard what you've been through as, as an autism and special needs mom myself.
Mhm.
I remembered Brian's, motor tics and vocal tics and PANDAS journey and explosive anger, temper tantrums. It was,
Mhm.
Lyme disease, Bartonella. But in an older child, to see
Mhm.
so many improvements, like you said, you see some every day,
Mhm.
and there's so many that you haven't mentioned that I recall you mentioned to me his frog collection or toad collection, right? Naming the toads with his dad, and that was so funny, and then they let him go. So he's hanging out with you. He's hanging out with his dad. Like
Mhm.
it's like family time, like the way it should have always been. And now
Right.
it's so heartwarming to hear that. And, I'm looking forward to more and more. You mentioned academic improvements as well. He's more interested now in wanting to work.
He likes to deep dive into his interest.
Hmm.
And so that's fun. So when he is doing something and learning, he'll go and research all about it. In culinary, he's blossomed with all sorts of seasonings and and cooking, and we even fried chicken the other day,
Oh,
and he
goodness.
was
Wow.
great. Like, he was very calm. I said, if you throw it in there, it's going to splash. He likes dangerous things, but he wants to do them, and now he can. And it's like so awesome that he can do it. And we practice, now it's like I can let him have a knife and cut when I would never have done that because I would worry what would happen. And he can type on his computer really fast, and he's so smart, and it's like his emotional development is starting to catch up. And I know we still have a ways to go with different impulsive things, but he will focus for a long time now. And he'll even correct me if I made a typo. And that doesn't mean that he's an easy child, and he might not ever be. It's not like he instantly became easygoing. He still, gives me feedback. That's what I say. It's feedback. I say, thank you for your feedback. He'll say, oh, that was, it was kind of bland. If I give him a meal or something, like, he'll give me feedback if it was delicious. But now his compliments are really great. He's like, that was the best stir fry.
Seriously? Yeah, he'll
That was
say
the
that.
best stir fry that I love that sauce.
Oh,
Because we're always constantly trying to figure out a better sauce to make. And because we unschool certain curriculum, he has fought me on, and I didn't want to just constantly be in a battle every day, because since he was sort of oppositional, not sort of, really oppositional. So I would incorporate learning activities in what we did every day, and then put that in our portfolio for our homeschool evaluator. But now that he's in 7th grade, now I can start incorporating like more advanced things that he's ready for, like
right.
math curriculum, and we have been doing engineering stuff and science, but it's more like we're writing the prototype, and I want him to be able to now kind of go into upper level stuff. So it's like he's more ready now, and more, I know I still have to introduce it in a certain way, but it just feels like it's sort of coming together. And our goal is for him to be a healthy adult, and to be, just to have a healthy, happy life. We're like, we didn't even think college was possible. And the other day he's like, I don't think I'm a college guy. I think I want to develop a prototype. And we always talk about prototypes. So I said, well, okay, let's prototype it. And he said, but I don't want to get sued. So he's like thinking about all these things as being a business owner, and which is really, it's awesome because now he's going into look what he's going to do in his future. I mean, parenting though we have had to adjust our parenting because at the beginning when he was little and being so difficult, my husband and I only knew what was done to us when we were little. So we didn't know how to handle any of this. And I feel like we handled it wrong. Because if a child is being this difficult, lifelong, using kind of like a more stern approach doesn't work. Because if he gets backed into a corner, he's not going to freeze. He's going to fight every time, 100% of the time. And so he would attack us with stuff. So it's like my parenting approach did have to change. And I actually went to a trauma-informed parenting classes for parents of kids, they foster children who are traumatized. And I'm like, I know he has symptoms of all these things, even though he's not traumatized, but this has been traumatizing. All of this has been.
For all of you, right? For all three of you.
I knew that I needed like parenting training also so that I could meet his needs better.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something I'm doing that's making it worse, like I want to know. And that was very helpful. I think I started taking that training in 2019. So that has shifted though. Our parenting style has shifted. We don't use force. We don't hit him. We don't yell at him. We don't threaten him. We don't say like, if you don't do this, we're going to take away your iPad for, even though it feels like sometimes when the tantrums were so severe, it felt like that would fix it, but it doesn't fix it. It's like a temporary fix. So that has definitely, as we've matured, now we're in our mid 40s, that has changed. And we did change our lifestyle too. We homeschool, we're barefoot. We go in the yard, we're growing fruit trees, we're growing food. We've removed anything that is severely stressful. Like we're not doing it. I would love to go to Thanksgiving. I don't want to have a 4-hour car ride and meltdowns and, our holidays ruined because we did something that we can't do yet. So, we do, we are sort of homebodies, which, like we don't do like the grind where we're constantly running and going to things. I will go pick up a friend and bring them here. Right. Or stuff like that. So there has been like a shift in the amount of pressure.
Yes, of course, keeping things peaceful, oftentimes, one of the confusing and often sad things that I feel sad when I hear parents of children who are recovering immediately put on more pressure on themselves. Okay, and the child. Okay, yeah. So when is he going to go to school? When is he going to, do his math? Well, I'm like, no. Your goal is for the child to be happy and healthy and a productive member of society and independent. That is the goal, because these infections are not simple. They are serious infections. There is major issues that can go on with the body, with the organs. And the primary goal here is health. It's not, is he going to be an astronaut? That's not the goal. If that happens, great. And many times, like you mentioned, Sam and his smarts are showing now. So that will happen along the way if you start getting rid of the root causes. So, Like you said, Sam has a ways to go, and he's got a lot more potential. So I'm sure, I'll be requesting you to join me again in the future for another episode, to share any additional progress you've made, right? How many avocados and lemons and oranges and whatever else you
Key
planted.
lime,
Those
yeah.
key
Mulberries. Yes, we have
mulberries,
mulberries.
yum.
And
Right.
we planted a lychee tree. And
Double yum.
I know.
Oh my goodness. I'm visiting soon.
We have a guest room now, so you can come to Florida and have a little. You can have some peace here. We'll share some of ours with you.
Oh, thank you. That is so sweet. So, I would like to heartfelt thank you, and I know it's going to inspire so many mothers of older children with special needs out there that feel that that's the information you get. Well, if he or she is older than 5 years old, and any kind of hope of recovery is gone, more or less. That's not the case. So
I had given up hope before because I just thought this is too hard. We can't even leave the house to go to the doctor. How can I even get the help? So it's really nice that we can do a video appointment. And you did want comprehensive information for that first the history, but it was very helpful for you to know that, because then you knew how to treat him. So
exactly.
I mean, thank you will never be enough, because every single day of my life now I get to have my child back that I never got to really experience fully, so it's so fun to uncover who he is now.
Yes.
So I guess if there's people listening who are feeling hopeless, the part that really made me feel like I have to do this, is, at some point strep, it was like, if he has this, I don't want it to be irreversible for brain damage. And now that I know he did have that, it's like, I don't want him to go into adulthood. But some people, they just realize they have it in their, before they're 20 or something. And it's like, it's still worth treating. It's still worth treating and having hope that they can have their life. So.
Yes. All right, Florida, I guess here I come in a few months.
Thank you.
So that was such a beautiful and heartwarming story, wasn't it? After all these years, Elizabeth gets to feel what it means to be a mom, and Sam gets to feel, his lost childhood. I mean, it's almost, I don't really have words. I remember that's what it felt like with Brian as well. I mean, it's a childhood lost. Anyways, I'm glad they are experiencing some good times, and we'll have Elizabeth back as Sam makes additional progress. It will be very interesting to see how, what Sam's real potential is. So once again, that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Thank you for joining me. And as always, keep smiling, take good care of each other. And I'll see you next time. Namaste.
Thank you for joining Master Herbalist Dr. Jody A. Dashaw, Director of the Bionexus Health Clinic and Bionexus Herbals, on the Bionexus Health Podcast, where we explore and share information and stories about recovering and healing from chronic and environmental illnesses such as mold biotoxin illness, Lyme disease, autism spectrum disorder, fatigue, Crohn's and colitis, mast cell activation syndrome, PANDAS, and more. Please help us grow our message by subscribing to our podcast channel and sharing the podcast on your social networks. For more information, visit bionexushealth.com.
Information within this video, audio, or text collectively known as the podcast, has not been reviewed by the FDA. Nothing within the podcast is intended as or should be construed as medical advice. Information is for general informational and educational purposes only. Consumers of the podcast should consult with their healthcare practitioners for medical recommendations. Seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider. Do not disregard the advice of a healthcare provider based on any information from the podcast. The information within the podcast may contain information concerning dietary supplements or over-the-counter products that are not drugged. Our dietary supplement products are not intended for use as a means to cure, treat, prevent, diagnose, or mitigate any disease or other medical or abnormal condition.